Welcome back to Uncut and Unfiltered. Today we are diving into one of the very, very few, in fact it's the only one I can think of, brewery/distillery here in the UK. That's right, today we're going to be jumping into the phenomenal brand that is Adnams. Lots of wonderful whiskies, a very interesting oddity here in the middle, which we'll come to shortly, and then some great beers, IPAs, bitters, all the rest of it. Really, really exciting. Joined today by Jack, our good friend Jack Toy. How are you, sir?
Hello, I'm very good, thanks.
Yeah.
Enjoying being here.
Yeah.
Southwold's lovely.
I tell you what, I'm excited for this afternoon now because not only am I joined by Jack, but also joined by Fergus, production manager here at Adnams. How are you, sir?
I'm very well.
Fantastic.
Yeah, really looking forward to the next couple of hours.
Absolutely. It's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to learning from you. Not only Fergus, though, also fifth generation Adnams. Yeah. Brad?
Yeah.
Brad Adnams, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. How are you, sir?
Yeah, very good today, thanks.
Good. We're really excited to learn a little bit more about your family legacy, a little bit about these wonderful products. Gentlemen, where would you like to start? What's the best pour to begin with?
Well, I think what we're going to go through, I think probably start with some Ghost Ship, I think.
Yeah? Fantastic. The original?
Yes, the original.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Ghost Ship. This is beyond the pale ale.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about that. I'm gonna pour as you talk, gentlemen.
So Ghost Ship actually came out the first year we opened the distillery. So it came out in 2010, which was the sort of year we put the distillery in. It came out as a sort of one-off seasonal beer. We didn't really have a season around the Halloween sort of period. We'd come across this hop called Citra the year before, and some of the hop merchants from the US were over talking to some of the brewers here, but also Mark Dorber, who runs the Anchor, which is the pub just the other side of Southwold. He knows most of the sort of American craft brewers, so they came over to sort of see Mark. Mark invited us in. We smelt this amazing hop and really decided that next time we had that opportunity, we would use this hop.
Yeah.
And now, if you're familiar with beer, Citra is now everywhere. It's the most grown hop now. But back in 2010, it was a really unusual hop. It had this really lovely lemon, lime, sort of elderflower note, and that's really what we sort of fell in love with.
Fantastic.
And so we decided next time we had an opportunity, which then was Ghost Ship the following year.
Okay, amazing. I have to say, I can attest to the wonderful smell, not only that comes off the beer, but walking around the production area.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it really hits you, those wonderful citrusy, lemony notes. Didn't realize that it was, because you're right, when you think about sort of IPAs nowadays, and it's kind of everywhere. I'm not a massive beer drinker, so I'm going to be learning a lot, probably putting my foot in a few things, so apologies if I get anything wrong. But exactly, I didn't realize that it was such an oddity. So you guys have kind of driven this forward, arguably, this sort of style. Is that fair to say?
I probably wouldn't say that. I think there was a couple of breweries who started using this sort of Citra hop. So Okemo Ales sort of famously were the first brewery in the UK to start using it.
Okay.
But then Us and Fine Ale sort of the year after. And then it just sort of exploded, really. For us, Ghost Ship sort of went from being our best-selling sort of seasonal ever to within 2 years being a permanent beer, and now is our best-selling beer. And we do a 0.5 version, which is our second best-selling beer.
Right.
So Ghost Ship and Citra as a hop generally have sort of taken over the brewery in the last sort of 15 years.
Amazing.
Does that happen very often in the industry, that you see a hop come out of nowhere and a beer out of nowhere and it's just like boom?
I think there are a couple of examples, but not to the extent that Citra took over. Citra really took over the hop industry, and in the US, it's by far the biggest sort of acreage now.
Right.
So it hasn't happened to that extent for anything else. There are a couple of other things. So we do a beer called Mosaic, which came out sort of a couple of years after that, which again had a big impact, but not to the extent that Citra did. Okay. Citra was just such a unique hop, but it's actually ergonomically, it's a terrible hop to grow. It's really difficult. So that it's sort of testament to the fact that people love the flavour so much that growers were willing to put up with the sort of inefficiencies of growing it because brewers wanted it so much.
That's really interesting. And because of its popularity, has that caused a problem for you guys on a sourcing front?
Initially it did. So first year we sort of ran out, and we wanted to do a second batch, but we couldn't get the hop, so we ran out. Okay. Second year we brought it back earlier, and again I think we actually ran out before Halloween the second year, and then sort of just based on that we said actually we need to just source as much Citra as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. It was still pretty tight for the first 2 or 3 years after that. But I think we sort of started to secure more and more of the contracts, and because we got in pretty early, I think we had that relationship with the hop merchants actually.
The priority.
Yeah. So we sort of backed the hop from sort of pretty early on.
Fantastic.
So certainly in the UK side of it anyway.
Aye.
It's great that.
No, go on, please.
I was going to say, it's great that as a Halloween beer initially back in the day, it's with Citra, because when I think of Halloween beers and US Halloween beers, it's always pumpkin. They love doing pumpkin beers, don't they, over there?
They do.
And we occasionally see them over here, but I guess the branding was so strong, the name was strong, it just sold itself.
Yeah, so originally it was going to be called Deathly Pale Ale, which is a slightly different story. But back in 1975, Adnams almost did a beer called Deathly Pale Ale. And if you've been around the pubs in Southwell, you might have come across the Red Line. Yep. So in the Red Line used to be a sort of glass cabinet with lots of old Adnams beers in there. And we were sitting there one day and we were sort of looking through some of these old Adnams beers, and there was one label, Deathly Pale Ale, sort of skull and crossbones, symbol for poison, the whole deal. And sort of looking around each other, what was this? It wasn't fitting. It doesn't fit Adnams now, and it certainly didn't fit Adnams in 1975 as a beer.
Yeah.
But we thought it's a great name for a Halloween beer. Deathly Pale Ale, lovely. And then we looked into it a bit more, and it was this sort of beer they brewed as a sort of centenary celebration beer. Going to call it Deathly Pale Ale. Had the labels printed, delivered to the brewery, and then at the last minute, everyone looked at it and said, "That's crazy. What are we doing? It's called Deathly Pale Ale, and it's got the symbol for poison in the front of it."
Right. May not go down so well.
So they changed it and did a different label called Centenary Pale Ale, which made a bit more sense.
Right.
But a few hand labeled bottles had still got out, so it was still this sort of oddity sitting in a shelf.
Okay.
And so that was really where we decided actually that would be
a good idea. That seasonal release. Yeah.
And we did the same thing. We thought, let's call it Deathly Pale Ale, and then the last minute said, no, let's not do that. Let's call it Ghost Ship.
I
love it.
Ghost Ship is much better for the SEO than having any word like death associated with the brand.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I have to say, I'm not a beer drinker. I know this brand so well. It's everywhere,
It can get more places.
Oh, listen, I'm sure. Yeah, listen, absolutely. And with export manager here, I have no doubt that you've got big designs to continue growing and growing, which is great always. But for somebody who's not a beer drinker, the fact that I know this so well, Ghost Ship, Adnams, it's there, it's everywhere. And it always seems to have such a positive response. It really does have that kind of, it's beyond a cult following now, isn't it? It's people are really dedicated to it, it's great to see.
Good.
So obviously you've gone from this to now your sort of low alcohol, 0.5%. You've also got this double Ghost. More recent, is that the end of last year?
Yeah, sort of October, September last year.
End of 2024, fantastic. How's that going down? What's the main difference there? Is just the higher strength, or is there other bits and pieces as well?
It's sort of still based on Citra to a degree, but it has other complexities, other hops in there, and I guess it's called double Ghost because we double dry hop it, which basically is adding more hops at different stages of the process. So it does have a more complex sort of hop character to it, but it's going down really well. I think the rate of sale is sort of jumped up really quickly, and I guess the nice thing is because it's sort of linked to Ghost Ship, it helps open the doors into some of the retailers much easier than a completely standalone beer would have done.
Absolutely, people are familiar with the brand.
Yeah,
we already love this one. We're surely going to love that one.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic. Now, I don't want to stop talking about the beer, but I am conscious that we mainly focus on whiskies here at Uncut and Unfiltered. Mm-hmm. Do you mind if we pour a wee dram to go alongside this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where should we start here? Do you want to go for a core range product?
I'd go single malt.
Start with single malt.
This one? Fantastic. Okay. So, gents, I'm going to pour again. Mm-hmm. Please tell us a little bit about this. It says aged 10 years. I believe that this is a slightly newer thing.
Yep.
How long has this product been about? What was the thought process when starting?
So we started distilling in 2010, as Fergus mentioned, and then we released our first whiskies in 2013. Just aged 3 years as they were legally whiskies. But I suppose over the years, what we've been able to do is lay down more whiskey than we've sold. So we've been able to extend the aging process each bottling. So I think we got to 5 years, and I think that tasted really good. And we extended it again to 8. And now with this most recent release, we've been able to put 10 years on.
Fantastic. And single malt whiskey, 40%, is this kind of your way of getting new customers into your spirits? Is that into your whiskies?
Yeah, I would say it's a sort of the gateway into our spirits. It's supposed to be quite really approachable, a nice easy way into what we do, but show off some of the things that we do that's a little bit different. So we use new oak casks, which is something that a a lot of distilleries don't do. A lot of Scottish distilleries will be using ex-bourbon casks for the main aging process, and then maybe finishing in some new oak. But we'll put new make spirit into brand new oak casks, and it will spend its whole life in those casks.
Fantastic. Okay.
And not every distillery manages to do what you've done, which is grow and keep stock back so you can have a 10-year-old comfortably without running out of stock. But that's not always the case, is it, historically?
No, but I think it's all... I can't remember who was talking earlier about it, but the sort of forecasting for whiskey is coming from a brewery background where we've got a shelf life. Every beer has a shelf life beyond which we can't sell it. So going from that, where you go into whiskey where there is no end point, you can keep going forever. You can keep making, you can make huge amounts of whiskey without have any sales at all. So actually learning how much whiskey to put down is an education.
Absolutely. But still, it's always good to have plenty of stocks aging, right? And when you can start putting big age statements on it, obviously the English market is very fresh.
Yeah.
It is growing, and you guys are one of the distilleries kind of early in and leading the way, obviously. So it's great that you can start challenging some of your Scottish and Irish friends there with an age statement on the bottle. No, it's not the most important thing, but some people do feel that little bit more comfortable knowing 10 years minimum. It gives people a bit of confidence, doesn't it? I have to say, this is absolutely delicious straight away. Still a good bit of a good bit of texture and gumption, given that it's a 40% ABV. Out of interest, are we natural colours, chill filtration, anything like that?
It's all natural colour. We don't colour up anything.
Love to hear that.
The 40% we do chill filter, because obviously at 40% it's not going to stay clear for too long.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we do chill filter, but it's the only one we chill filter. Everything else is au naturel.
Lovely. Okay, very good.
And what's your thoughts on cocktails, using stuff for blending, or just having a dram? Are you quite open to it being used for all sorts?
We are quite open, especially with the single malt. I think we quite often do things like cocktail of the month, and we'll suggest cocktails that we'll use our whiskies in. Manhattan with the single malt is really good. One of my favourites.
I'm getting this really wonderful. I'm not normally a fan of licorice, but quite a nice balance of licorice with some of those tannins, which presumably we were discussing French oak earlier.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. Really, really delicious. So this is small batch releases, single cask releases?
So typically we're blending sort of 10 to 20 casks together to get per batch on this.
Pretty small batch stuff.
I guess in the scheme of
I'm sure it feels massive for you. Sorry, I'm not to put it down. We're even smaller at the Whiskey Barons, so no judgment.
But it's nice.
That's
our area.
Lovely. Okay, great.
And it gives us allows us to do things like the 10-year-olds, where we can actually have little batches of things coming out where it's a bit older.
Yes. And what I love about it, we were kind of speaking briefly earlier off camera, but for everyone at home, I love that sort of idea of, yes, obviously there needs to be a level of consistency, but you're not holding yourself to, it has to be exactly the same. A little bit of batching consistency is nice because it showcases the development of the spirit, the differences in the cask and as it ages, that influence, etc., etc. Ultimately that's what you want to see. You want to see products developing as with your beers.
Exactly,
we've moved from ghost to double ghost and the low alcohol. It's lovely to see that on the whiskey side of things as well.
So I think we learn more as we go through the years about actually what we want our whiskey to be and where we can take it. So actually tying ourselves to a flavour profile from 7-8 years ago probably isn't a great thing. We want to see a development on it, especially as we get into more whiskies with some age.
Definitely.
We were talking about drams for seasons the other day, and this to me is a lovely summer dram. This is reminding me of warmer times when we're not battling through the driving rain.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's really nice.
I have to say, they pair really nicely.
I think it's got a nice honeyed note to it that runs through it really, really well. I think balances off really well with the beer, I think.
Yeah, really nice. And is that something that you're pushing as well? The kind of, I think they call them like barrel backs, or a pint with a wee shot of whiskey. Boilermaker, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I haven't had that one before. But is that something that you push as a brand or in any of your pub? I mean, we are in kind of Adnams town here. You're not shy of a few pubs, and I know they expand well beyond Southwold. Is it a case of that's something that you push forward, having that experience of both your beers and your whiskies for customers?
It's not something that we've done necessarily in the UK in a big way, but it is something that I'm looking at doing in the US. That's sort of a key strategy for building both beer and spirit sales in the US, because I think Boilermaker as a drink is quite popular there. So it really fits with obviously what we do.
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, cool. Very interesting.
Should we have some kind of spittoon-esque glass?
I was thinking it may be difficult to get through, all of these whiskies and beers without a something.
Perfect.
Production's on it.
Amazing. Behind the scenes, we have an amazing team, guys. Thank you, Phoebe, Georgia, Stevie. Very, very good.
Put it on the
Behind the bottles.
behind the box. Cool.
We can pass it around. Cool. So, do we want to move on to the next whiskey now, or are we enjoying this one? It's still opening up. In fairness, it's quite delicious.
I guess we could move on to broadside and do the sort of trio of broadsides.
The trio of broadsides. I love it. Okay, cool. Let's do it indeed. You happy there, Jack? Yeah, you're all sorted.
Good, thanks.
I'll pass that over to you for a hot second, and I'll open up this broadside. So, broadside was originally, obviously, your bitter here at the brewery. Setting up the distillery in 2010. How quickly did this little beauty appear? Because this is quite an interesting thing.
I think we probably distilled that early 2012, so quite
quickly.
soon. Yeah, because we started distilling. It would have been 2011 that we did it, because we started distilling towards the end of 2010, and I think that was done quite soon after.
Yeah, I think it's not so. The distillery equipment that you've seen, the stills are German. They're a company called Carroll. So when Jonathan Adnams and John McCarthy went out looking at stills in Germany, they went round a lot of stills which were associated with breweries, and it's quite common, I think, in Germany for breweries to have a small distillation equipment where they'll make a beer brandy, which is really what Spirit of Broadside is. It's
very
a
German
beer
style,
brandy,
right?
eau de vie de beer.
Yeah.
That's a very typical thing. I guess the bit that is slightly unusual is the fact it's aged in oak. Most beer brandies, eau de vie de beers, are clear spirits that aren't aged at all.
Right.
But we wanted that age. We wanted a bit of. And we wanted a brown spirit before we had whiskey to call whiskey. So I think
There was that flexibility within the rules.
Yeah,
right?
it allows us to actually take store it in cask for as short or for as long as we want, really. So the original batches, I think, were probably 6 months stored in oak, but then sort of pushed out to now where it's sort of 3-4 years old.
Amazing. Okay, which is still a pretty good age considering you don't have to do that. And I have to say, you're saying it's quite a standard sort of thing in the German market.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people here in the UK, if they don't know Adnams,
Yep.
probably haven't seen anything like this before. So for the production process, essentially what we're doing, it's whiskey with the hops included. It's a very simplistic way of kind of breaking that down.
Exactly.
Is that fair to say?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, we're taking essentially a whiskey mash, but that's got hops in, which is a beer, and then distilling that through.
Yeah.
So eau de vie de beer, I love that. It sounds really cool. You've captured my attention for sure.
So it's the same beer that we turn into bottled broadside. We ferment it the same way, and then it goes back to the distillery, and then we distill it in the same way we distill any whiskey at that stage. Then
absolutely.
And what we're really trying to do is keep that sort of fruit hop character. So we use English hops in broadside, which have this nice orange peel sort of note to it, and really we're trying to make sure those notes end up in the spirit.
Yeah, and some of the sort of more fruitcakey aromas that you get from broadside, which come through from our yeast, because I don't know if it's been mentioned, but the yeast that we use we've been using for over 100 years, and it really likes those styles of beer, a little bit higher ABV, brings through a lot of that sort of more fruity aromas that come from the yeast that fermented at slightly higher temperatures. So some of that coming through to the spirit, you get some of that sort of almost raisin fruit cake.
So that the yeast isn't interested in the duty thresholds whatsoever. It's like, I'm going to keep eating the sugars. Never mind, Rachel Reeves. I'll just keep on doing what I do.
No, our yeast is very stuck in its ways.
Cool.
God, you're absolutely spot on with fruitcake. Even on the nose, that's quite a dense fruitcake. It's really, there's some weight behind that. That's fascinating.
So there'll be some black malt or chocolate malt in the actual in the mash bill for this. So I think some of that soft chocolate notes come through as well.
Very interesting. Jack, is this something that you're familiar with as a bit of a brewer yourself, as somebody who dives into this? Have you ever come across anyone that's making this in their garage as you do all your little concoctions?
No one that's ever... No, because normally the point is if you're like a craft brewer or like a microbrewer, it's a struggle enough just to make enough beer, isn't it? And you never think, all of that beer, I don't know what the ratio is of like beer to spirit at the end, but I'm not going to condense it right down to a small amount of spirit and then put it in a cask. So I think this is quite unique over here. I was going to ask, like, obviously whiskey, customers know what whiskey is. Is this a harder sell when you go to, even within the UK or further markets, you have to do a bit more explaining?
It does take more explaining, which does make it harder to sell. It's really about finding the customers or the distributors that really understand it as a product and are willing to do that education piece to help bring people into the sort of philosophy of it.
Because if you can evidently make this work, it is a bit of a case study on how you could sell scotch that's dropped below 40% with the right branding around it. And what was you gave it a phrase like it's not, you can't
spirit drink.
Spirit drink.
Yeah.
As long as you've got a good story, a good label, spirit drink can work.
Yeah. But this is the thing. I think that becomes a little bit more difficult. The great thing about what you've got here with the Adnams brand as a whole, and again, similar to what I said with the Ghost Ship products, is it's broadside again.
Yeah.
So, okay, eau de vie de beer is, well, what is that? Maybe I don't know, and maybe that is a bit of a harder sell. But if I know Adnams and I'm drinking their beers and I've got broadside and, this is broadside, but this is 43% broadside.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, let's have a go. And all of a sudden, and again, I mean, I've actually tried your broadside in a pub yesterday. So I can tell there are those definite similarities, So again, it makes me feel a lot more comfortable with just that brand identity holding everything together. Whereas if it was a standalone product or if it didn't have the kind of broadside connect, it may be a little bit harder for me to understand.
But I think it's one of those products, it benefits from people actually be able to taste it. So if you can go into one of our stores around East Anglia and you get to taste it, then you get to know what it actually is.
Yes.
But I think that sort of hand selling, that tasting is really important to it.
Right. And that's, I have to say, we've been in the shop and your team is absolutely fantastic, whether it's in your pubs or your restaurants or the shop. They were really, really good at letting us have a little taste. And it wasn't like we were getting special treatment. There were customers coming in and out the whole time that we were there, and we saw other people asking. And that's what's really important. I feel like sometimes, particularly as maybe a non-whiskey drinker or somebody who doesn't know spirits or what they're, especially if you're buying a present or something, to be able to go in sometimes all these weird sounding names and what's the difference and why is this one 50 quid and this one's 500 quid and what's going on, what am I looking at here? To be able to just sit down, at the end of the day, the taste is what matters the most, right?
Yeah,
regardless of what it's called, whiskey, eau de vie de beer, whatever it is, if we enjoy it, then we can sort of get that much more sort of involved. So for everyone at home, definitely keep your eyes out for the Adnams shops. And out of interest, from a sort of distribution point of view, what is your focus here in the UK market? Is there key sort of places that you're looking to position this? Is it something that you can pick up quite easily in different supermarkets, or are you aiming for the more specialist end of the market?
The spirit of broadside, I think, if sits within the more specialist end of the market, because I think it does require that level of education and understanding to be able to let people try it, talk about it, understand what it is. So that's definitely where it's positioned.
And what about with the rest of your range, Brad?
The single malt is got the widest appeal. I think that obviously that's the entry point into our spirits, or into our whiskies at least.
I've seen that in supermarkets, I'm sure.
Yeah. So that's got some wider listings across some of the bigger retailers. And then the triple and rye they've got some supermarket listings, but I think it's much
pretty local,
much more local.
Okay.
Where people obviously have a wider recognition of Adnams. But then,
Yeah, but I think partly that is that triple malt isn't a common term, so it needs more explanation. Right. And I think probably at some point when we do a redesign, we'll probably just call it a wheat whiskey, because I think that probably describes it more accurately than triple malt does.
Cool. So Brett, for everyone at home, because we probably won't be able to try all of these bits and pieces, but just in case we don't get to this one, explain what goes into this. What is the difference?
So it's primarily wheat. and then a bit of barley and a little bit of oats. But wheat's the driving character, right?
A little bit of oats, I really like that.
A little bit of oats.
A little bit sort of single pot still-esque, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you mind me, were you able to know the breakdown of wheat to barley?
So it's
to
about
oats?
5% oats, and I think it's sort of 60%,
Yeah.
60% wheat, and then the rest barley.
Okay.
So wheat is doing the heavy lifting in there. So yeah, it is a wheat whiskey.
Fantastic.
And I think you do, and I think when we do blind tastings on it, it often comes out as the favoured one of the three core.
Right.
It has this lovely sort of milk chocolatey note to it.
Yeah.
And it often scores really well. But because it's tall triple malt, people probably pick it up less than the single malt because they think they know what the single malt means more so than they know what triple malt means.
I suppose that's fair enough. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't want to stop talking about this, but just going, I'm really enjoying this eau de vie de beer, and I'm enjoying saying it. Nothing else. I'll keep saying that all afternoon. That fruitcake was hard to look past at the beginning because it is so dense and thick and rich and delicious. I'm really getting these wonderful kind of icing sugar notes as well now, and then leaning into sort of darker chocolates towards the end. What are you getting, Jack?
Yeah.
Are you
It's absolutely that kind of marzipan and icing sugar note. Yeah, you hit it.
marzipan as well?
It's like a Christmas cake in a glass.
Very naughty. It's nice. What is it again, Jake? What style of drink is it?
I think it's called an eau de vie de beer.
Eau de vie de beer,
yeah.
Or
Absolutely.
you can say beer brandy as well.
Nah, that's fun. I'm not going to do that. Delicious though. Really, really interesting.
I love looking at the range like this now, and it's like a snapshot of time for the company, and you can just think, in another 50 years, maybe there's a bottle of Spirit of Broadside in a glass cabinet somewhere, and the production team walk by that glass cabinet and go like, they were doing this back then. Maybe we can do something now. And like,
I love it.
You're part of like this long continuation, aren't you,
Yeah.
in things like this? It's great.
Absolutely. And talking about kind of legacy and continuation, Brad, tell us a little bit about the Adnams family and you being a part of that. How long have you been a part of the sort of the brand, so to speak? And what has changed since you've joined? Is it still sort of driving forward in a similar way, or?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I was quite like I grew up in South Africa, and I came to the business just after we started the distillery, really. So it was, I think I arrived in 2011, and it was quite a thing seeing my surname sort of spread across.
Plastered all over the town. Yeah, I'd imagine that's a bit daunting.
But obviously an immense sense of pride. But over those years, there's been some really drastic changes. I mean, the spirits was starting distilling was a great thing for us. I think it added a whole new dimension. It filled our shops with something new. It gave us something new to talk about, and also a great new interest in just trying and doing different things. We've been quite lucky in the leeway that we've had in terms of design as well. Everything's quite bright and cheerful. So yeah, I think it's just been mad over the last, I don't know, 13 years of seeing how everything's developed. I think also when I started our beer range, probably we only had 4 permanent beers, maybe 2 or 3, maybe.
Well, you've really grown then, haven't you? Yeah.
Yeah, and now we brew, a huge range of beers each year, collaborations as well. So the business has really completely changed since I started. It's been great to be a part of it, and I hope for the next 150 years it continues in the same way.
For sure. So yeah, I was going to touch on that. Obviously, the Adnams sort of took over a brewery that was already standing. Yeah. I think it was 153 years ago. We worked out earlier, right?
It did take us a while.
It took us a while. Yeah. So over 150 years. I mean, that is mega. The fact that it's still, as you say, thriving and growing and developing and changing. Is there anything in particular that you would like to sort of be able to put your stamp on the business? Is there an area that you want to grow into, whether it's a different style of whiskey or different beers, or you want to expand on cider? I don't, you tell me. Is there anything?
I think I look after our export business. So for me, the biggest thing that I'd like to see is for us to get a more established in a lot more export markets. So that's the key thing that I want to bring into the business is establishing us as an international brand.
Global brand. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I love it. Make the world your Southwold, right? Why not? Yeah. And is there any particular markets that you want to focus on? Where's your focus at the moment?
So our focus at the moment is in Europe. Okay. So France is one of our key markets, and then also Australia is our sort of second biggest market.
That's very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, But then after that, I think I really want to develop the States, particularly for whiskey, but also beer. So that will be sort of my two focuses: Europe, bit of Australia, and then the States. Well,
What's the history with Australia then? Is that just because there's a lot of expats that know the brand name?
A lot of
from
expats,
before?
yeah, and the beer culture in Australia is quite similar.
Okay.
So I think the styles of beer that we brew, people understand them really well. So yeah.
When you go travelling, you don't need a business card. You can just slap one of these single malts down the table. Adnams, that's me.
Absolutely, I love that. Yeah, definitely. All right, I'm really interested to try this. And my understanding, sorry, from what we were just saying, gents, is, well, you tell me because I'll get it wrong. What is this product, and how does it join in with the two broadside elements that we just
sort
enjoyed?
of the next part, so after Spirit of Broadside, after whiskey, we then do something called Both Barrels, which is the original broadside beer, but then aged in whiskey barrels. So ideally, for the very first batch, it wasn't ours, but now it is, because we have empty whiskey barrels.
Right, of course, okay.
So
okay.
we first did the first batch of Both Barrels in 2010, because we knew at some point we were going to have these empty whiskey barrels. We thought, let's think ahead, let's think what we're going to do with them. Mm-hmm. So we aged broadside, in some, I think it's some JD, but Jack Daniel's barrels, but I think it was only 2 casks. But we aged it on cherries. And the idea was really, I don't know if you're familiar with beer called Rodenbach.
Not particularly, no.
It's this sort of Flemish red ale. It's got this really lovely, complex sort of tart flavour. So it allows a bit of wild fermentation. So it allows some bacteria to get in there and give this lovely acidity to the beer, on top of the acidity of the fruit and a bit of oak character as well. Okay. So we wanted to, and I love that beer, but I wanted to take it a little bit further and add that whiskey note in as well. Okay. So it's a very small batch thing, and it's sort of done like a Solera system where we never really empty the barrels. We always top them up to try and keep that microflora going. Yep. You know, those lovely wild yeast and bacteria, so they still have have that character running through the years. So technically, some of this beer goes back to 2010, but obviously in sort of homeopathic sort of quality.
It sounds so special. Wow.
And it is, yeah. So we do it in very small batches. So I think this batch was bottled in start of December, sort of end of November. Okay. And it probably was about 20 casks.
Amazing. Jack passes your glass there.
I'm looking forward to this.
You look like a kid in a candy shop, mate. You're beyond excited there.
And only a mere 9% ABV. I mean,
it started at 10, but you know, barrels do what the barrels want to do.
Yeah.
Lovely. Jack, were you saying something about cherries? Am I getting that, or am I misremembering?
So we age it on cherries. So we actually put cherries in the barrels.
So there are cherries in the barrels.
So it's the mix of broadside with the cherries, with the acidity from the yeast, and also that whiskey. So it's a blend of lots of different things. And the challenge every year is to come up with a blend that sort of talks about all of it without any of it being over sort of dominant.
Strikes that balance.
So it could change next year. You might chuck a different fruit in or something else.
I think we like the cherry combination, but some years it's more whiskey led, some years it's more fruit led, some years the broadside speaks a bit louder. So it is, every year's the balance is a little bit different, but the components are usually the same.
God, that mouthfeel, it's like getting a big old paintbrush in.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing?
That's it in a good way. Yeah, it's really nice. I can see that going down well with Belgian beer fans.
Yeah, so I think it's got lovely sweetness, but the tartness is what really makes the beer, I think, for me, because it lifts, I think, acidity in beer just lifts the beer. It makes it much more drinkable. So at 9%, it doesn't taste like
it's not cloyy, like a very sweet sort of untart beer would be very cloyy in the mouth. This is finishes nice.
I think that's where I struggle a little bit with some IPAs and stuff. The fruity elements can become a little bit over dominant because I'm not a massive beer drinker. The balance sometimes just doesn't hit it right for me. That is spectacular. You're right. It's that sort of wonderful sweet opening gambit that then really does coat your whole palate, doesn't it, Jack? Yeah. But then that slight astringency, acidity coming at the back end. That's a really, really well balanced.
I think, and then you get the little vanilla whiskey note, just sort of rounding it.
Subtle, but yes, absolutely.
And it goes really well with then a sip of the Spirit of Broadside. And I know like half and half was meant to be like maybe a mild or a very pale ale. You could do it with a 9% as well.
Why not? Why not?
You
when in South Wales,
absolutely.
You're still putting half of Spirit of Broadside in there.
Yeah.
Oh no, just having in
Just
Scotland it was,
fortify it a bit like a fortified beer.
I didn't try pouring it in, but it was always a thing in Scotland. You'd go to the pub and you'd order half of your ale and a dram.
But
I don't think that ale was this strength. But yeah, it's gorgeous.
Very, very nice. Yeah, they do balance out nicely between
The things you find in Southwold.
Absolutely. That's right up my street, actually. I wasn't expecting to love any of the beers that much. That's very, very good.
Yeah, I mean,
interesting.
it is that, a lot of brewing is obviously very controlled. We're talking about single strain yeast or very, cultures of yeast that are giving us one thing.
Aye.
Whereas this is a bit more about letting go and letting the wild microflora
Do what it does. Absolutely. Yeah.
And are these casks stored in your bonded warehouses underneath the road?
These are actually stored in the cellar
You're
here.
trying to figure out how to get to them. Don't
Where
tell
are
them
these?
where they are. Fucking hell. Don't trust this man.
And the key is in your pocket right now.
No,
Run.
it's a secret code. Not even I know what it is. So you need 12 people together at the same time to open it.
Oh, wow.
I love it. Very good.
That's really good.
This is just fantastic as well. Sorry, you said this is about 4 or 5 years old?
So I think the bottle you've got
In
now
cask.
is probably in cask is So this bottle is probably 5 years old in cask, maybe 6. Can't remember now. But I think the next batch will be a bit older than that.
Yeah. Which I love again, as we're saying with this, the slow development of it. As and when it grows and bottle it as it comes. But this is just wonderful.
Is
this only available here in the Southwold shop?
The both barrels is mostly just from us or online, www.adnams.co.uk.
Get in now, there we go. Cool.
But yeah, so it has we do obviously sell outside into some bottle shops, but it is a very specialist beer, very small quantity. So yeah, it's not gonna suddenly appear on Tesco shelves.
No. Do you ever do like beer festivals, like Camera Beer Festivals? Would you send kegs of this out?
We don't. I think in the early years, the only use for this beer was we would take a cask off and take it to a Camera Beer Festival.
Specials,
festival specials. So we do that from time to time now, but it's fairly rare because now we actually have a way of putting in a bottle and selling it. Whereas in those early years, it was still an experiment. We didn't know what we were going to do with it. We just thought, actually, this is a really interesting beer.
Yeah. Let's keep toying around until we figure it out. Yeah, absolutely. I'm struggling to pinpoint. I'm getting some really wonderful spices starting to develop on this eau de vie de beer. And it is, it's wonderful. I'm struggling to put a finger on what they are. It's almost like slightly curry spices, which I wasn't expecting to start to develop. There's some really...
Like
wonderful complexity, like it's complex.
Like a general garam masala note or specific things.
No, a specific spice. Yeah.
I think you often get a bit of cardamom coming through. That's probably not what you were talking about, but I think that sort of floral note, and I think I often link to sort of cardamom.
Right, yeah. It's a lot more complex than I was expecting, particularly for 5 years old or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
God, that's good.
But that was also put into new wood as well, isn't it?
This was in new oak, originally, yeah.
Okay. So it's new French oak, I think, on that.
Yeah, this is French.
Yeah. Does it mess up your stills running beer through it as opposed to...
No, because essentially it is what we run through normally. It's there's nothing. Obviously, the hops that we put into the process don't make their way through. So for all intents and purposes, it's the same thing that we make.
So there's no extensive cleaning process after one run, right?
No more so than any others.
No, yeah, of course. No, but obviously, if you're in a distillery where you run peated stock, you've got to climb in those tanks and really give them a good brush down, right? Yeah. So okay,
so we don't. We talked about earlier. We don't run peated through.
No.
I think there's always this. There's horror stories in brewing industries where they've put peated malt through, and and the next 20 brews afterwards taste of peat.
They never got rid of it.
Yeah. So and that's in the malt handling system. It's not designed to really clean it out that way. So we don't put peated malt through the brew house. The only peated sort of experiment we did was we actually took Spirit of Broadside and we put it in some ex-Isla casks. I think it was two casks, I think, and that came out with some phenomenal sort of phenolic sort of TCP notes.
Yeah, that was
I can imagine that would give it a whole other level of complexity.
Have you ever been curious then? You've done the standard unpeated run for the last 10, 12 years. Is it now starting to come in the back of your mind? Peat. Is there a little voice? Just like...
I like peat. I really like those phenolic sort of those flavours of sort of whiskey. But No.
I was just going to say,
We're not doing it.
but what about the smoked malt that we use for the smoked beer?
Smoke is different. It's not. It doesn't hang as well.
Okay.
So peat is just forever.
Yeah.
You put peat through the malt silos, the malt handling system. If a little grain sticks in a corner of one of the bucket elevators,
You've got
your
it
next
forever.
batch of beer tastes of that forever.
Forget it, yeah.
Whereas we have used some smoked malt, and we've used some cherrywood smoked malt, and it comes through really well in the beer. But the next batch is not. It's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
untainted.
It's untainted.
Yeah.
Whereas peat just.
But
it
in terms of
lingers.
using that malt to then...
We could, so
Come
we
into
could,
whiskey.
so we could do some smoked malt rather than peated.
Yeah.
And I think obviously there's a wider discussion about peat use in all whiskey really, about the sort of the longevity of that. So I think probably throwing our hats into the peated ring is probably not where we want to be anyway.
For sure. I mean, the interesting thing for me, exactly like yourself, I love peated whiskies, and you look at Scottish whiskey distilleries more recently, like Glenallachie, who have sort of brought in that peated style, and it's great, and it kind of makes you think, well, should more distilleries start doing this? And a lot of the time I think, well, yeah, actually you should. But sitting here with you guys and trying all these products, they are all very of Adnams, of Southwold.
Yeah.
It's not like you've got a peat bog out the back, is it? That you
Not
can
that I've
draw
seen,
from. No, well, exactly. If you find one, you let me know. But this is it. It wouldn't feel of Adnams, I think. So exactly, why chuck your hat in a ring that's, it's a completely different area for you. I agree. I think it would be out of place. Cool to have those little renditions where you can use a cask and get that influence. But I think that the Adnams brand is away from that anyway, and it really is. I have to say, drinking all of this, I don't know about yourself, but obviously having walked around the town, having enjoyed this area, it does feel very much of Southwold, which is rare. It's not easy to do that with whiskies, with beers, to have a place that's really ingrained, and you leave and, enjoy this in a year's time and think of this journey and of our trip around town and all of that. I think that's quite rare.
It's
difficult to do.
what it should be with brands, and when they get it right, that's when
that's
those
what you
memories are
want.
triggered,
That's what they're all after, I think,
Yeah.
right? But I think it's very difficult to do, and it's a testament, to what your family has been doing for the last 150 plus years, to what the team nowadays are doing to develop all of these brands and bring it all forward to market. It's fascinating.
Yeah, but I think that sense of place it's obviously easier if you've been around 153 years.
Yes.
You've developed that over time.
But it is really important to almost everything we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that all the grain that we buy is from this region, it's from East Anglia, it's from Suffolk and Norfolk.
Yeah.
Which is not a hard thing to say because we're in the sort of breadbasket of the UK. So there's a lot of grain around here.
Yeah, but still.
But we only ever buy grain from here. It
important.
has to come from here.
Yeah, yeah.
So we tie ourselves into that. We lean into the fact we want to come from here. And even down to the water profile, we don't, it's, I guess in distilleries it'll be less common, but in breweries it's quite common for people to take their tap water, put it through reverse osmosis, take all the minerals out and add exactly back in what they want.
Right.
We don't do that. We take the water that we have, we take the mineral content that comes in with it.
Yeah.
We take the chlorine out because we don't want that.
Of course.
But we still we still work with the sort of mineral content we have.
Right.
And that sort of leans into this sense of place.
Yes. Yeah. And like you say, easy to do given that you've been around for 150 years. But from the whiskey side of things, obviously you've been around 15 years.
Yeah.
The brewery really allows you to lean into all of that, which is wonderful because as we were saying earlier, the English whiskey market, it is a new market, and you must be the only ones with such heritage in the whiskey world because you can cross over. It's wonderful, it's quite rare, quite an oddity. Really, really interesting.
And just double checking, there's not space in the still house for another still to put peated stuff through.
No.
Just one more. Okay.
Just double check.
But thanks for asking.
I love it. All right. Shall we move on to the next round? Where do we want to go next, gentlemen?
Should we go rye?
Yeah, let's go for the rye.
For the rye?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll crack this open if you want to empty your glasses out, gents.
Okay, so the rye probably it follows on quite nicely from that sense of place bit, actually. So the rye that we use to make the rye whiskey is grown by Jonathan Adnams.
Amazing.
He does sell it to us, so it's not charitable giving anything. But he grows it in Raiden, which is the next village just outside of Southwold.
I love this.
And Raiden means rye on the hill in sort of old English terms. So it's got this lovely story. You know,
It's all falling into place.
It's coming from a
falls
place
into
where
place.
rye was a really important sort of crop, and suits the land in what is not particularly great. Sort of great agricultural sort of growing region, but yeah. So every year we go and walk Jonathan's. It's 2 fields. It's not, we're not talking about massive quantities or anything.
What's more hardy? Barley, rye, wheat?
Rye's pretty hardy, as long as you ignore the ergot. So I don't know if you, but ergot's this sort of fungus that grows. It grows on lots of grain, but grows quite a lot on
Particularly
rye.
on rye, yeah.
And if you walk around the sort of rye fields, you'll see this sort of black sort of mold growing. Sort of about that long, sometimes quite long things. Sort of pencil thin, sort of bitter ergot growing out. And ergot there's 2 types of ergot. One of them will kill you, and the other one just makes you a bit merry. And so if you know all those stories about the sort of the medieval sort of dance frenzies where people died, but before they died, they all went on a really
mad party.
Mad party and went and danced for days and couldn't stop. The theory is that was because they ate bread that had lots of ergot in it. So that it's really important not to eat a lot of ergot. I think it's probably the lesson there.
A good takeaway, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So rye is quite sort of common, quite well known for having ergot. So you do have to make sure you sort of extract it, but it's quite easy to extract. You just need to go through a sieving process to make sure you take it out.
I'm a terrible dancer, so do I need to eat more rye bread now or something?
I don't think it makes you a good dancer.
It makes you
Sorry if I've given you that impression. It doesn't make you a good
dancer.
dancer.
A frantic dancer, maybe.
Frantic, on the way to death. So,
Lovely.
Yeah.
What a Friday night.
But anyway, so rye is, so we use it in beer to give us lots of spice character. It has that really sort of black peppery sort of note in the back, which and we love in beer, and we use it in we actually use it in a little bit of rye and go ship. But in the rye malt, we stuck with first rye we did 100% rye mash, and we put it through the brew house. And in brewing terms, rye is a terrible grain to use because it essentially runs off like wallpaper paste. In which to say
porridge.
It becomes worse than porridge. It takes hours. So instead of doing 4 brews a day through the brew house, it was 1.
Yes.
So we have taken that down to sort of 75% rye now, rather than 100%. So it runs off a little bit better.
Okay.
But you still get that spice character. You still get that sort of that really interesting character.
It still means that rye is the lead sort of proponent of it, whereas I think a lot of rye whiskies will just be just over the 51%. Yeah,
absolutely.
Where this really lets the rye shine.
Yes. I think the wonderful thing, though, and you say it lets the rye shine, and I would agree, but as I was saying earlier, I've tried a lot of ryes and I kind of group rye and bourbon in together, which is wrong, but I do it anyway. And I struggle with that flavor profile a lot. Everyone at home knows I bang on about it all the time. That's just me personally. What I love about this is that balance. You have absolutely got that beautiful rye spice and the pepper, absolutely. But the texture, the balance of the vanillins going in as well, the sweetness, it all kind of really evens out. And so for me, this is definitely one of the more approachable rye whiskies on the market. I've tried very few that I find palatable. And I would say this is actually quite enjoyable. So, as far as that goes, for me, it's very high praise. What about yourself, Jack? Are you a rye whiskey drinker?
No, I don't think I've ever tried it. I had to add a little bit of water there because I found that a bit hot initially.
Okay.
But it's lovely. It does have that element of like you can smell the kind of the rye bread note to it.
You get that
it's
rye
quite
bread,
appealing.
definitely. Yeah.
What's the ABV? Sorry,
It's 47.
I was just about to come on. So we've gone from 40% on the single malt to 43 on the eau de vie de beer to 47 now with these two. And I don't know if we'll get onto this one, but the distiller's choice here. Is this a single cask?
It is a single cask.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, no, the 12 year old is not a single cask.
Small batch.
It's very small. It's just like 5
casks.
Smaller batch again, cool. And a cask strength or nearly
not-
cask strength?
It's diluted down a little bit.
Tiny bit.
52.
51.2. Slight touch of water just to open it up and give it a bit
Yeah,
of
I mean,
breathing room.
I generally add water to almost every whiskey anyway, just a little bit, just to open all of them up.
Cool. Very good. Very good.
I think what's great in like a homogenized world to have all this choice of different things, and you can go barley if you want, you can go rye. Some people might end up preferring a rye whiskey and then go on a journey to find rye whiskies from around the world just from trying it. But if you didn't make this and there wasn't this as an option, you'd never know, would you?
Absolutely. It's rare to find such variety all coming out from one roof. It's like, You know, it's phenomenal to have that choice, and I think it's going to be wonderful, especially for yourself, Brad, to be able to tour the world and start, you know, showcasing ultimately all different styles of whiskey. I mean, save the peat. We're not missing anything here, really, are we? This is kind of a really wonderful all-round. You're hitting all the points with the flavour profile.
I think that's where the heritage, the brewing heritage, has come into play, because it's we've got that sort of thinking using different malts, different grains through brewing, and we've been able to apply that in the spirit making as well. It's sort of being a bit more innovative from taking the experience that we've got and using it for something new.
Definitely. Absolutely wonderful stuff. Out of interest, I'd like to talk about the brand a little bit, because these are quite sort of quite punchy colours, I'd say.
Yep.
Talk to us about the brand and the thought process. The beers are one thing. I'd like to start with the whiskies. What's your aim with the brand? Is it supposed to be very much eye-catching? Is it something that you're looking to appeal to kind of everybody and make it kind of very approachable?
It was supposed, I think when we first came into the whiskey design project, what we wanted to do was, because we were an English distillery and it's quite young and new, and because we were bringing in different mash bills that were a bit more innovative and using new wood, we thought there was an opportunity to be a bit more louder, a bit more youthful and energetic, to represent what we were doing with the liquid. So that's where that sort of design cue came from, was bringing that energy into our design and being a bit different from the sort of Scottish industry and that sort of visual appearance that was quite monochromatic.
Right.
So that's...
I guess it felt a bit disingenuous at the time to sort of talk about heritage on the whiskey when we didn't have heritage on the whiskey.
Fair enough, yeah.
No, I'm not sure that's always necessarily where we'll stay, and I think lots of whiskey drinkers really value the heritage, and we do have heritage, but it's on the beer side rather than whiskey.
Yeah.
So I think that I think maybe as we sort of evolve and we sort of go through the next sort of generations, I think we might well start to talk a little bit more about the long heritage that's here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without trying to con people into thinking we've been a distillery for 250 years. We haven't.
Of course, no. But at the same time, you are leading, one of the distilleries, I'd say, leading the way here within English whiskey.
Yeah.
There's not many that are over 10 years old. You guys are now, on your 15th year sort of thing, right? So it's, you may not have the Scottish heritage and the Irish heritage that goes back many, many hundreds of years on the whiskey side of things, but, keep doing what you're doing, and before long it'll be multiple hundreds of years and growing. So, yeah, I still think heritage is important for English distilleries. And yeah, look, like you say, you don't want to be feeling that, the customers never want to feel like they're having the wool pulled over their eyes.
Yeah.
But I think the attitude then that you've had in the beginning, it should instill a lot of confidence with customers that they are sort of with a brand that they can trust, and that will grow. So I think it's wonderful to see. Yeah. So you were saying this is the only chill filtered one. The rest of this non-chill filtered, because it's that slightly higher strength.
Yeah.
And out of interest, what is the thought process behind these being 47? We talk about industry standards a lot. A lot of the time we see 40, we see 43, we see 46.
Yeah.
47 is a bit of an interesting one. Talk to me about that.
So I think the practical reality is 47 was the safe bit where we knew we didn't have to chill filter it.
Okay.
So that 46 we thought we get it just about where people think they can get away.
Yeah.
But 47 was we'll definitely be fine at 47.
Okay, great.
So that's really as complicated as it got.
Hey,
we
listen.
thought we don't need to chill filter at 47. We'll keep a bit more flavour profile in there. Let's go there.
Absolutely. And for myself as a whiskey geek and a bit of a purist, and everyone at home, again, I think lots of us do like to see natural colour, which is wonderful to see that that's throughout your entire range. Rare, I think, but really, really important to a lot of people. But equally, the non-chill filtered, does it make a difference? People will argue back and forth, but it's nice to know that ultimately this has been untouched and unadulterated. It is the whiskey as you've produced it, as it's meant to be. It sits in the bottle, and it's beautiful. And why mess around with a good thing, right?
Yeah, and I think chill filtering, whichever side you come down, it does affect the flavour. It might be in minutiae in terms of what your drinker actually picks up.
Yes,
but of course it affects the flavour.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
In the same way that every time we filter a beer, we know it affects the flavour.
Yeah.
But we do. brewing, distilling, there's a lot of series of compromises where you have to find a middle ground that works for that product. And I think that middle ground moves a bit depending what you're talking about and who you're trying to sell it to. But yeah, any filtration will ultimately affect flavour.
For sure. So then let me ask you this. Is there any plans with any of your sort of more core range, easily accessible products here to take them up again any further? Or is it really about having that approachable style?
I think for the core range, it's about having that approachable style. But I think there's things that we can do to play around, particularly maybe the single malt. There's an opportunity to bring that alongside the other two and have a non-chill filtered version or even a cask strength version.
Okay.
Which I think would give people a clearer view of what that whiskey is as it comes out.
For sure. Yeah. I think it's really interesting. Again, we talk about educating consumers and where people are at. I do think that there's, obviously a huge market for sort of more easygoing, approachable styles. But equally, I do think lots of geeks and freaks like Jack and I who are always interested in seeing those little bits and pieces. Obviously, you have got this Distiller's Choice range. Tell us a little bit about this, because this is kind of where you are currently playing around at those higher cask strengths or slightly below with those funky casks. Did I see a Bordeaux or a Burgundy in your shop earlier?
I think you saw the Bordeaux. In the shop you saw the Burgundy, but in the cellar you saw the Bordeaux.
Catching my eyes, all these wonderful red wines. I love that sort of style, and the Islay cask that you've been discussing.
Cask. We've done some sherry and some port.
Yeah, port.
Really interesting.
There's some English oak casks as well.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Two English oak casks.
Yeah,
only two.
Phenomenally expensive oak casks.
Okay.
There's a reason why not many people use oak from England.
Right.
It's expensive because they don't grow straight enough.
Right.
Which is really what then drives the fact you've got to cut a whole tree and you get 2 planks out of it.
Right.
So that means it's expensive.
Yeah.
But we do have 2 English oak, but I think they're probably 3 years old now.
Yeah.
Just going into 3. So
a little bit of time to go.
A bit more time to go.
But hold tight, guys, at home, because soon enough, English oak. I don't know if I've seen any other distilleries doing English oak.
I think I've seen one other.
One other? Okay.
But not recently, but I've seen one other.
Okay.
But yeah, it is.
But an oddity nonetheless.
Yeah, in terms of species, they're still French oak.
For sure.
But they don't grow as straight.
Right.
So we're presuming that's going to give us a few oddities, but we'll find out in a couple of years.
Interesting. And is that the sort of thing that you'll put under probably the Distiller's Choice
it would
range?
definitely sit under that. Yeah.
Okay. And so this is basically your playground. Is that kind of fair to say?
It's those casks that John who sort of put aside and said, we'll fill that and see what that does.
Yeah.
I think we're still in, we might be going 50 years, but in whiskey terms, that's still quite young. So we're still learning, we're still experimenting.
Yeah.
So I think there's lots of that still to do.
Cool.
So we've got the Burgundy casks, the port and sherry were phenomenal whiskies, but they were aged completely. It wasn't finished in those, it was aged for their whole life in those.
New make straight into
Fantastic.
a sherry.
And they were so intense.
They were
really sort of fruit-led.
Yeah.
So I think those were, my favourite was probably the port cask.
Yeah, I'm still nursing a bottle of the port cask at home.
But I think we're still in that stage where we can experiment, we can do some new things. We aren't set in our ways, and I think we try not to ever be set in our ways. But obviously, when we're a relatively new whiskey distillery, we can play a bit more because we sort of allow ourselves some more mistakes, some more time to find out what works for us.
Yeah, and not everything's going to work, but that's kind of the excitement of it all as well, right? And it's the same as just because I love this rye doesn't mean that everyone at home will love it. There'll be people who prefer something different, and that's the beauty of it. But ultimately, this Distiller's Choice is catering to the Jacks and the Jakes of this world who want to get involved with the Adnams brand at that next level of experimentation. Out of interest then, where for our audience home, where can you find these sorts of products? Because if these are kind of widely available, presumably, we're talking super small batch here, probably not a lot of it going around. Is it another adnams.com?
It's at adnams.com.
Adnams.com.
Pretty much, yeah.
www.adnams.com, guys. You've heard it here. Fair enough. Okay.
I think you'll find small bits every now and again in Master and Malt and places like that.
Yeah. Online specialist retailers.
Yeah. So it's those specialist retailers. So that's really what those whiskies are for.
Cool. And I mean, you've already mentioned a bunch, so I'm not trying to, just because I'm nosy. anything else you can tell us about what's coming down the line on that front? You've given us loads already, but
So I don't think we haven't got any set dates for anything, but
No, I was just gonna mention the one that we did for Fred Olsen.
Oh, yeah.
That's only available on their ships, but we sailed.
you've got to go on a cruise.
You got to go on a cruise to
hey,
get
if
it.
it's good, I might. What is it? Tell me first.
So it's a 10-year-old single malt that sailed around the world on one of their cruises. So it took 90 odd days.
Oh, cool.
To sail around the world. So it went over the equator, I think, 6 times as it went around.
How many times do you have to go around the world to go over?
No,
6?
because it went like
Oh,
this.
yeah.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
GPS went off.
But then it came back here, and then we bottled it and sent it back to them, and they've got it on their ships now to sell.
So it was quite.
That's very cool.
Yeah, quite a cool project, I think.
Looking at the label, if you ever run out of warehousing space, I've got a great idea for a location that you could put a load of casks in. That lighthouse. Loads of space right in the centre. Just go floor to ceiling. You could get 100 casks in. I don't know what HMRC would, or the person that goes around and bonds something.
I think the lighthouse keeper will have as much to say about it as
Yeah.
HMRC.
Love it. Have we got that, guy? Sorry, are you giving it to me?
Oh, the discount code.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you were
right.
giving it to me right now. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Cool. No worries. Sorry. Got lots of production stuff happening in the background here. So we're moving on from the rye, and sorry, just before we do move on from the rye, I just want to hit on again that texture is really impressive to me.
Yeah.
You know, not that what I think matters, but just for me as a personal consumer, I'm really impressed by that. I think it's wonderful.
But I think that is the new oak. That is that intensity of vanilla, that sort of intensity of oak, I think just balances out that sort of spice from the rye.
And it just sits so well at that 47%. Delicious.
And you have to correct me, Brad, but I think it's won the, and obviously maybe it's a very small category, but it's won the best English rye 4 years out of the last 5.
That's pretty good
That's
going.
all right.
Fair enough.
That's all
Okay,
right.
so I'm not the only one who thinks it. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you guys at home, if you haven't tried the Adnams rye, definitely something that you want to be getting stuck in with. Can we move on to this triple? I'm really interested in
definitely.
this triple malt because again, like I said, kind of reminds me the way you're discussing it with that small amount of oats of that single pot still style. And out of interest, being an English whiskey, having such a depth of sort of background and history within the brewery world, but then setting up the distillery, I know you still have amazing team members with wealth of background and loads of people with input. Was it something where you did tours of Scotland, of Ireland, of other places with that sort of hundreds of years of whiskey heritage to kind of learn and understand what you wanted to do?
A little bit, but I think this might be out of turn, but I think the whiskey world is a lot more closed in terms of sharing information than we're used to in brewing.
Okay.
So in brewing, I could walk into almost every brewery in the world in the UK and ask them almost any question about how they make that
they'd be
beer,
pretty open.
and they'd tell us, and they'd give us ingredients if we ran out of ingredients. So it's quite a sort of a collaborative industry generally, from big to small.
Yeah.
Whereas I think when we first got into whiskey, I thought we found it a lot more closed, and I think particularly on the Scottish side, I think there was. And it was just obviously at the stage just after the English whiskey sort of company had opened, and I think maybe there was a bit of apprehension about what English whiskey was going to be.
Right.
So I think that made it a bit challenging to get information. But the English whiskey company, sort of not too far from here, actually came down and helped us in terms of giving us a bit of guidance as to what to expect of the sort of new make spirit coming off. So David Fitt, who worked there at the time, came down and actually tasted the new make spirit coming off the still and gave us some confidence that this is
on its way.
This is all right.
Yeah.
We're not making a huge mistake here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's nice to hear.
Can I ask a question maybe on a kind of export question then? So obviously every year we get these stats of like how much Scotch whiskey is worth to the UK economy as a whole. English whiskey must be a growing category, although small within that because there's not as many distilleries. It must be growing, and the Exchequer must be happy that there's more export volume coming from lots of different places, right? That seems obvious to me.
Yeah, there's a lot more export English whiskey going out, but I think it is still very small in comparison.
Yeah.
I don't know what the numbers
It's definitely growing, but I think the reality for English whiskey still is there's far more being made than there is being sold.
Yeah.
Because we're still we're one of probably the 3 oldest sort of English whiskey distilleries, most English distilleries are still putting far more stock down than they are growing, because they're putting stock down for not this year's growth or next year's or even the year after. They're putting stock down for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years time.
But what that could lead to is like a really interesting time where something that's just 15, 20 year English single malt whiskey out there on the market, and everyone suddenly goes, oh, this is great because it's 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's sort of inevitable that will happen. So because there's so much investment going into English whiskey now that actually in 10 years' time it will be a significant category. It still won't outcompete Scottish whiskey. It's not, that's gone far. That's too much of too big a power really to play with. But it will phenomenally grow in the next 5 to 10 years.
And you're playing a small part in helping keeping the potholes filled and the NHS running and all that kind of stuff. Like, it is a...
Yeah.
Well, I think
that's a way of looking at it.
But yeah, well, I mean, HMRC will probably get more from us if it's sold in the UK than if we export it.
Yes.
An export. Okay. Right,
You're a funny one. You're thinking about taxes and politics and all this nonsense. I'm trying to enjoy a nice whiskey, mate. What are you doing? You're ruining my vibe. God. I tell you what, though, fair enough. You're on a different... I'm thoroughly enjoying this so far. And it's exactly what I was thinking.
Good.
It is that kind... I don't want to put my foot in it, but it's kind of that Irishy vibe. And I love that. It's really, really quite yummy.
Yeah, that's much easier, much more accessible without any water added than
Right,
rye.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's really interesting because obviously saying at the beginning about single malt, people get single malt, rye, everyone knows what a rye is. Triple malt maybe takes a little bit more of an education.
Yeah.
My God, educate yourself, guys, and buy a bottle of this triple malt because it's really, really yummy.
So this is the same wash that we use to make our vodka, which is Longshore vodka. And the wheat obviously gives it a really smooth character in the vodka. And I think exactly the same thing happens in the whiskey. You get this really nice smooth character coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I don't think it's even it's a small amount of oats, but they make a difference.
Yeah,
it's
in the
the
mouth.
smoothness from the wheat, yes, but it's almost that kind of porridgey texture at the back end. It kind of lingers around and kind of sticks a little bit to your tongue and your gums.
It's very appetizing.
It is, exactly.
Really appetizing.
It's making
It's almost
me
a bit more.
salivate
It's a little bit oily, sort of like hangs around. Yeah.
You get whiskies like Mortlach, and they're known for like their smoky bacon vibes, and you think, I've got to get some smoky bacon crisps or something.
Right.
But this is like, I need to have a bowl of porridge right now.
Right. I feel like it's making me. It's the sort of thing that you could serve as an aperitif to get people going before a dinner and get them hungry, and it's yummy. It's got this kind of expressed orange peel vibe, that porridgey note to it, very, very smooth and easy going. I think. Actually, yeah. As a kind of what were you calling it? Sorry, I was calling it a barrel back. What were you calling it with a whiskey and a beer?
The Boilermaker.
A Boilermaker. I think this is the perfect sort of a Boilermaker style whiskey where you can sit and sip and really analyze, or beer. Boom, lovely, right? That's the way to get your Friday night on its way. I'm going to say there, absolutely. Really, really yummy. So sorry, the triple malt is this where we start using a little bit of bourbon cask as well? Is that what we're doing?
So no, this is all American.
This is American oak, but it's brand new American oak. So you get a bit more of the vanilla coming through from the wood, because I think American oak has got a higher vanilla content than the French oak. Sort of.
I always get a bit of coconut as well.
Yeah. There's
coconut edge to it.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I can kind of see what you mean. Actually, you were talking about the oils.
Yeah.
I'm going down more the sort of express orange. Oil, but I can definitely see what you mean. Desiccated coconut.
Yeah, and I think part of that coconut is that oats character as well, that texture coming in.
Texture thing, absolutely. Yeah, from a textural point of view, definitely.
Yeah, so I think that genuinely when we do blind tastings across, we go out wherever we're tasting, this comes out really well. I think it's really approachable, really smooth, but it has some really interesting characteristics, and I think that sort of milk chocolatey note, that coconut note, I think really works.
So, behind the scenes, guys, we've been trying to make sure that we get you a lovely little discount code. Adnams has been very, very generous in sharing a discount code with us for you all at home. So, if you're liking the sound of any or all of these products, you can go to www.adnams.com. .co.uk, just as well. Check. Sorry, you can go to www.adnams.co.uk and you can use code Uncut 10, that's UNCUT 10 for 10% off all of the products site-wide. And I have to say, thank you very much, guys. That's very generous of you. Already your products are actually pretty accessible from a price point of view. I've seen them in the shops. We're going to come on to the ratings shortly. We'll be asking you exact prices.
So no discount, you're saying?
Oh, well, I'd still like the discount for our audience. I'm happy to pay full price. I'm more than happy to do so. But the fact that we've got that 10% off already is absolutely great. We'll come to a little bit of a rating shortly now and give our buys, our don't buys, our oosh if it's really good, or a bin it if we hate it. I don't think we've hated anything. So I think we're all safe. Don't worry. We're not going to fall out at the end of the podcast. Done. No, don't worry. I think we're absolutely safe here. This has been a wonderful little afternoon. Before we do get to that wrap up, is there anything that you want to talk about from a branding point of view? From what you guys have going on at the moment, from what you've got coming up, anything that you really want to kind of talk about with our audience to kind of showcase? Put you on the spot there. Sorry. No pressure. No pressure.
That is putting me on the spot. I don't know. I think if you take away anything, I think it's really about coming and trying some of the spirits that we make, and obviously the beers. But I think we're doing really interesting stuff that's a little bit unique in some ways, and it's really something that you have to try to understand. And I think you'll probably speak to that. But,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And out of interest, I mean, obviously you go to these Adnams shops and you can get little tasters. Is it something that you're focused on to go out around, whether it's the UK or on a global level, to do tasting sessions to get your audience a little bit more engaged?
Yeah, I think across the range of beer, spirits, I think tasting is key. We don't have this massive marketing budget that we can go and do these advertising sort of schemes, but so tasting is key for us. And particularly on some of the spirits where people are less familiar with what they're meant to mean. I think lots of people think they know what single malt means, but your sort of viewers aside, not everyone really knows what it means. But taste is really key. So getting it in front of people, getting them to taste it. So come to our shop, buy a bottle, find out whether you really like it. And I think English whiskey is still a new category. So I think you sort of what you want to tell people about English whiskey is actually, it should do lots of the stuff you already know. It should deliver lots of the flavors you're already familiar with. Yeah. But actually English whiskey is a bit freer. It's a bit newer. It's allowed to experiment a little bit more. Yeah. So actually there might be things in there that you actually find more interesting than what you're currently drinking.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's a perfect summation. Yeah, absolutely. What are you thinking?
I've already lined up my ooshes.
Oh, you already know what's coming. Okay. I have to say, I cannot put this down. I'm trying to make it last.
There's more bottles in the shop.
Both barrels. I'll be heading there next. You don't have to sell me. Both barrels. This is like a sneaky little winner that I was not expecting to fall in love with today, to be quite frankly honest. I'm struggling to leave a little bit in the glass for afterwards. Anyway, listen, let's get to a bit of a roundup. Now, gents, I'm not going to ask you, especially with the Adnams name behind you, it would be a bit unfair to ask you to rate your own products. What I am going to ask you about at the end, what is your favorite product here today? I think we can do two. What's your favorite beer? What's your favorite whiskey? But also, what are you most excited about from a product point of view coming up? So have a little think. I won't put you on the spot this time, Brad. But Jack and I are going to run through these. Like I say, we do a buy if we like it, a don't buy if we don't like it, an oosh if we think it's absolutely spectacular. In fact, you're already lining up ooshes, multiple. That's a good sign. A bin it, which I'm not worried about. We probably won't, I don't think we hated anything, so happy days. Jack, let's start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. We started with the Ghost Ship. Now, what are we looking... You can buy these as singular products. Would you typically buy it as a pack of 4 or something, or would you typically buy it as a singular?
We advise you buy truckloads.
Well, fair enough. Okay, how much is a truckload then? Typically a single bottle, is that fair?
Yeah, so you can buy that in almost every supermarket, and you can buy it as single bottles.
Okay, do we have a price point on that, gents?
So it depends on where you go in, but it'll be sort of $1.80 sort of per bottle.
Circa £1.80. Shouldn't be paying much more than £2 depending on where you're at.
And if you're buying it in the multiple deals, it'll probably be much less than that.
Right, grand. Okay. Ghost Ship, you know it, you love it, you've had it well before you came here. Talk to me. £1.80 a bottle. Are you enjoying that for a beer?
It's been a buy for a long time. It's still a buy today.
Yeah, happy
there's
days.
a reason it's such a beloved part of the Adnams portfolio.
Absolutely. For me as well, yeah, listen, I'm not a beer drinker. It's not the sort of thing that I would lean into. But if I was going to buy something, I think I'd be quite confident in buying this now and certainly sharing it with, a few other people. So yeah, I'd give that a buy. I quite enjoyed it. It was interesting. We then moved on to the single malt. What are we looking at for a bottle of this, gents?
Bradley.
Put me on the spot again.
Because I can't remember. It's 30-ish.
30, I think it's
36 pounds.
36, yeah,
36 pounds retail, happy days. £36 RRP.
That's such a good price
For any
this year
whiskey nowadays,
for
right?
a 10-year-old.
And particularly now that we're coming into
absolutely.
that age statement, not that it matters, but it's always kind of nice to see anyway.
That's a strong buy-in for a company Adnams size compared to some Scotch distilleries. It's also a reminder, like, some places have a lot more stock than you and are charging 20, 30 quid more for a 10-year-old product. It's like, you can make it this good down here. Don't just keep raising the prices every single year.
I completely agree. I think English whiskey can be overlooked. Global whiskies can be overlooked. Too many people, I only drink single malt Scotch, or I only like this. And you're getting stuck in your old ways and your habits. And I think that's really negative to do. Exactly that. Distilleries that are part of huge conglomerates putting out 10 years old, significantly higher price than this. I think this is wonderful. I think it's exactly. It's a good whiskey, and at that price, it's a very strong buy. No brainer. We moved from the Ghost Ship onto our range of broadside products, and I love this sort of intertwining between your beers and your whiskey, or eau de vie de beer, I should say, sorry. It's the last time I'll be able to say that today, probably. I'll see if I can fit it in again.
You can
and
say
the both barrels.
Fine.
Yeah, I'll just say it on my way home, exactly. Let's start with the broadside bitter. About the same as the Ghost Ship?
Yeah.
Are we looking at £1.80 again?
Yeah, they tend to be bought in the same
Give or take.
deals.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay.
So I'm a big fan of cask ale, and I think I had some of this on cask yesterday, lower ABV.
Yeah.
I like this even more with the higher ABV in the bottle, so it's a buy. I prefer it in this style.
Yeah, this format's the strong original.
Yeah, this works for me, definitely.
Yeah. No, I agree. I have to say, I had it on tap yesterday with yourself, and I can't remember what we had it alongside, but the other one was my preferred. Today, I actually much prefer that. So maybe it is the bottle, the higher strength. Something's working for me. That's a very strong buy. The eau de vie de beer is how much?
About the same. Thank you.
$34.99. Nice
Thank
one,
you.
Phoebe, in the background. Thank you very much. $34.99. Jack?
Yeah, it's a buy-in. As I've said a few times on various of these podcasts, it's the talking point, it's the story, and it's something different. And like, you're gonna surprise your friends with something they haven't tried if they're coming around your house and you pour them a dram of this.
Yeah.
And the fact that it tastes good as well is an added bonus. We can surprise our friends with weird stuff.
And it's not good, and you trick them into it, yeah.
I think this will go down very well with people.
Yeah.
And the fact that you could do a tasting of the two beers and the eau de vie de beer.
Yeah. You got it in as well. Good man. Happy days.
People will leave that party saying, God, that was interesting.
Yeah, I agree. The flavour is already really, really lovely. So it's already a strong buy. But yeah, the fact that it is that little bit of an oddity, I don't know anyone else that does this. So for me, super, super strong buy. Actually leaning towards a noosh. Not going to quite get it there today, but who knows? I'm probably going to buy a bottle and have it with a party full of people. And this is the thing. Gets conversation going. I love that. There's nothing like having a good conversation about something that you're enjoying and getting that all going. So super, super strong buy on the eau de vie de beer, the broadside. We then moved over to the both barrels. Now these are super limited edition. They're slightly smaller bottles at 330 ml, but much higher strength at 9%. Where are we at price?
We've got a price point coming in.
£5.49.
£5.49 per bottle. Only available in certain Adnams outlets, is that fair to say? Or www.adnams.co.uk, where you can use Uncut 10 for 10% off. Ooh, it's as if I work in marketing. Jack, tell me, where are you at with this?
It's like the sound of the sea crashing to the shore. Oosh!
There we go. Absolutely. This is a winner, right?
Yeah.
I have been savouring this. I was not to be honest, gents, I was a little bit worried about
You don't
beers
like beer,
today.
do you?
I'm not a beer drinker. I'm a cider
You've
drinker.
mentioned it a few times.
I have mentioned it a few times. I love your ciders. There's no ciders here today.
No.
There are two really, really wonderful ciders, a fruity apple English cider and a blush cider.
Yeah.
Both of them are just spectacular. And I've been really enjoying those as we bounced around your pubs. Been getting involved in the beers and I've enjoyed them. This is exceptional. and it's a massive oosh. One of those things, it's a bit of an oddity. I love the fact that it's super small batch. You're not just going to be able to pick it up in a Tesco's. Only people who visit here in Southwold, who go to specialist outlets, are going to get the opportunity to try something so special. And as Jack said, 100% what you really want to do is line the 3 of those up, and you have got a real evening with a group of friends. As a 3, it's a massive oosh. So you've impressed me. I'm going to, like I say, do my best to savor this until I can run over to the shop after this podcast and load up. So we moved from these 3 wonderful broadside products over to the rye. Something, like I say, again, sometimes I struggle with, but really was wonderful today. Where are we at price point on this one, guys? Do we know?
£42.99.
£42.99. Obviously, a little bit of a step up in percentage from the 40% single malt. We are now at 47% on the rye. Jackie boy?
I'm going to say, purely on price point, and just to say a different word or two, I'm going to say it's a don't buy from me. I liked it. I just feel it's bold to say don't buy in front of the producers as well. But
You haven't even left yet.
The door gets locked. But, I've enjoyed so much, and I did enjoy it, but I'm not just not to proceed what I'm about to say for another bottle, I'm not just a barley drinker when it comes to spirits. A barley drinker? A barley-based spirit drinker.
I know
de vie, de beer, de broad, yeah, I think it's fine. There's enough here for everyone.
Yeah, listen, you can't buy everything. You're loading up your trolley. Fair enough. You've got a budget. For me, it's a buy. It's a good buy. You know, ryes are not something that I'm going to lean towards, but I can happily say that if I'm looking for a rye, particularly for cocktails, I think that's very well balanced. It's a strong buy. It's very well priced. Jesus, you can't complain with that at all. And then it's just. I'm not missing anything out, am I?
No,
It's just this last one, the triple malt
Yeah.
last. Grand. Where are we at price point on that?
£42.99.
$42.99. Happy days. Triple malt. Jackie boy, where are you at?
And this is my other oosh, because this was delicious, and this surprised me. I didn't expect to like this as much, and I had lunch today. I'm not that hungry, but it made me hungry, and it was an appetizer, as you say, and it's great when a spirit can do that, and not just make you slightly tipsy over the course of an evening, can make you think about food, can make you think about flavour profiles maybe you've never experienced. It was lovely.
I completely agree. This is the winner for me. I find it fascinating that people, it's so funny, you know what you like and you get stuck in your ways, and sometimes that can be the worst thing because you miss out. Oh, I only drink single malt. Well, you're a feckin' idiot. You should try this triple malt. It's delicious. For me, again, price point, phenomenal. It's a massive oosh. English whiskey, it may be a young market, but it doesn't mean that they cannot compete with the Scots, with the Irish, and with all the other different sort of, on a global level, all the other distilleries. I think this is absolutely spectacular. And it's the first time I've tried it. We've been bouncing around. I tried the rye, I tried the single malt. I don't know why I had missed this. So really interesting. Do not sleep on this, guys. Phenomenal value, but more importantly, absolutely insane flavor. And exactly that, Jack, I think is the sort of thing you could start your evening with it before a meal and really get people hungry and talking. But equally, a great way to end the night. Outstanding. Really outstanding. I loved it. Now, gents, we said at the beginning, we're going to come to you. We're going to ask you your favorites here at the moment and what are you most looking forward to coming. So we'll start with the beers. Brad, as an Adnam, what is your favourite product? Adnams, sorry. Yeah. Apologies. As an Adnams, what is your favourite product here from the beer point of view?
From a beer point of view, it sort of changes seasonally, but so currently it's winter and a bit cold, so bottled broadside is my go-to.
Okay.
Maybe when it gets to summer, I'll start going for Ghost Ship or Double Ghost. I mean, Double Ghost is a recent favorite, so it's hard to pin it down, is what I'm trying to say. But I think at the moment, I'll go for broadside.
Fair enough. Okay. Broadside at the minute. And for yourself?
I love them all equally.
Okay.
Every child.
That's the standard. Okay. If I were to push you.
I think the thing I've got in my cupboard most at the moment is the both barrels.
Okay.
I'm sort of really enjoying that.
Are you hoarding this? I'm not going to be friends with you anymore if you're the one who's taking it out of the shops.
Hoarding it. I do have a couple of cases in the cupboard.
Okay.
I really love where the balance is finished this year. And it does change every year. But this year, I think it's really perfectly balanced between the whiskey, the broadside, the fruit. I think all of it's really working together without anything dominating. So so that's my current the thing I have most in my cupboard.
Hey, listen, I can imagine.
Are you keeping some to age?
No, I my philosophy on aging beer is just don't.
Okay.
Almost every beer is much better young.
Fresh.
There's some beers that change and mature into different things later on. And if you want to see what that ends up, great. That's great. But actually, almost every beer is better drunk fresh. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would always do that. And on the spirits, I'm really falling in love with where the triple malt is at the moment. I think that sort of milk chocolate note, I think I'm really, really enjoying it. But I still love them all equally.
Hey, listen, they're all your babies, fair enough. But the triple malt standing out. And for yourself, Brad?
I'm going to go against the grain here because the rye is my favorite and it has been for a while. I just love the punchiness of the rye.
Yeah.
That sort of full mouthfeel. I think it's excellent.
Fantastic. Absolutely, gents. And lastly then, before we finish up here for everyone at home, what are you most excited about? What's coming here with Adnams? Is it a certain product? Is it an experience that you've got coming? What's going on?
I think certainly on the whiskey, I think it is about the fact we're getting to an age where it actually means something.
Right.
I think that's a really nice sort of lean into where we've been. So, we started in 2010 when very few English whiskey distillers existed. And now we're getting to a stage where actually we've got this lovely, lovely bank of casks that actually give us some really great flavours.
Yeah.
And I think really, really seeing where that takes us is really interesting. And the two English oak casks, I think I'm really interested to see what that happens with those two.
Fantastic. Okay. And for yourself, Brad?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing with the whiskey is having that back catalogue of spirit that we know has got some decent age on it, and we can sort of cherry pick a few really interesting things out and bring those out in some single cask releases, hopefully.
Fantastic. So lots more to come under the Distiller's Choice, lots more experimentation. Adnams is certainly not done. We've got a whole range of products, a variety of flavors, but there's going to be loads more coming. So please do make sure you stay tuned in to what is happening here in Southwold and what will be coming to you on a global level, thanks to Brad here. Jack, anything you want to wrap up with before we go?
I just want to touch this bottle and hear you say the phrase one more time.
What, this one or
No,
this
wrong one. Wrong one.
That bottle. Oh, sorry.
Touch it, mate.
Touch this bottle.
What, the Eau de Vida beer?
There we go.
Absolutely spectacular, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for hosting us, sharing all of your wonderful spirits and beers. Absolutely spectacular afternoon. Do not sleep on Adnams. As we said, www.adnams.co.uk. Use code UNCUT10 for 10% off. Until next time, we will see you. Sláinte.
Sláinte.